I think he's pretty realistic about telling you if your idea is not going to work, or if it's a podcast might not be the right tool for you to use.
Hi, this is John Brandt from the Podcast Factory, and today I'm talking to Jimmy Fullerton from the Uncommon Life podcast. What were some of the obstacles that would have prevented you from starting a podcast?
My initial thoughts were to, first of all, why do I want to do a podcast? What's the purpose of it? What do I really want to say? I knew the ultimate desire I had was to get more connected with my community and the entrepreneurs in the community where I live, and do that through means of podcasting. I knew that I needed more direction as far as what am I going to use a podcast for long term. It was a time issue. I could have figured it out, but I realized after researching it that it was going to take time to do the editing and all that stuff that you have to do technically to make a podcast work and run smoothly. And I really didn't want to add something else to my plate. I've known Jonathan since 2012. It was when he and Darren Persinger were doing the Making Agents Rich podcast. And that's how I found out about him, because they had been consistently doing podcasts and they were ranked up there in iTunes. He's pretty clear about not everybody needs to do a podcast. I think he's pretty realistic about telling you if your idea is not going to work, or if it's a podcast might not be the right tool for you to use. He's pretty good about explaining the way you should use a podcast and how it can really be the most effective for your business. I wanted the podcast to be about entrepreneurship. So we started digging a little bit deeper. I wanted to make sure that my idea wasn't a stupid idea for me to think about starting a podcast. So he told me some ways I could use that podcast and how it could help me. He thought it was a good idea for me to go ahead and do it.
So in terms of the three big things, is my podcast idea worth it? How does it benefit my business? How does the technical side of that work? How did the Podcast Factory help?
They helped me to really dig into why I wanted to do a podcast. What message did I want to send? And what do I really believe at the core? What's really driving all this? What's my message? And who is my client going to be? Who am I going to be talking to? They helped me to narrow down who my ideal client should be, who's my audience as well. I'm just trying to build a following and an audience that ultimately I can turn into clients. So but he helped me identify who I'm talking to and kind of craft a message around that idea and that concept. I started thinking more clearly about what I'm putting out there. He helped me to view the whole thing about the podcast and a content vault, to view it as an asset that I'm building. And that was very illuminating. I have not thought about that. The weekly calls, it's good to have access to hear some of the struggles that other people are going through, some of the questions that they have, and to learn from people, many of which are smarter and more knowledgeable than I am, mainly in this space. Jonathan I like hearing him make these on-the-spot strategy calls that he'll make, or it's good to hear how he thinks, because the more you hear that kind of stuff, the more you pick up on it, and it helps you.
What specific aspect or feature do you like most about the Podcast Factory?
I like the fact that Jonathan's willing to kind of give tough love when you need to hear it. He can be direct and frank, but he can also handle directness and frankness as well. So that's important, to have somebody that can be honest with you, but that can accept honesty back.
Is there anything from a benefit side of things that you want to mention?
I like the way they use Basecamp and the way that they've kind of systematized the process, which makes it less overwhelming. The thing about all the stuff I got to do, they break it down. Rachel's a big help there in the way they break it down into manageable. Yeah, I told them what my time, like how much time I could devote to this per week. They tailored that to my schedule, which was good. As long as I can see progress and start checking some things off, I stay motivated. I stay locked in. I stay engaged with that goal that I'm doing. And that their process is good, that they can tailor that. They give you some tasks to do each week, and it makes it very manageable.
Cool, man. So last couple questions here, pretty simple. So the next one for you is, someone else similar to you, maybe they're a business owner, their plate's full. Would you recommend the Podcast Factory?
I absolutely will recommend the Podcast Factory.
Anything else about your experience or the podcast itself?
Yeah, there's a couple things. One, they're good about giving you a template for how to launch it. They have a good marketing plan for that. But also, since I've launched, I've had people that I haven't talked to in years that have reached back out to me and say, Jimmy, I heard your podcast. They're coming out of the woodwork to reconnect with me. That forces me to be intentional about relationships. Once a month, I'm having to think about, okay, who am I going to reach out? Who would I like to interview this month? Who am I going to reach out to? And it forces me to reach out to people I might not ordinarily connect with. So it's a good way to build a relationship with somebody you don't know.